As you live, so shall my son.
The first half of Season 3 of Shadowhunters left off with a huge cliffhanger, so let's break it down on what happened. What's going on, Shadowhunters family? Lisa here, and it is time to talk all about the first half of Season 3 of Shadowhunters, and man, was it a doozy. For those who asked why I stopped doing episode recaps for this show, honestly, not enough people were watching them to make up for the time it took to really make these, so I decided to test it out in this recap style instead of doing it as a whole for 10 episodes. Alright, as expected, here's your warning, spoilers are ahead. So Season 3A left us with these big things. According to Simon, Clary is dead, Magnus gave up his magic to save Jace, and it seemed like Jonathan was brought back to life and is now bonded to Clary given that she is alive. So let's break down the season and go over what happened to each of our characters. First up, for Magnus and Alec, their relationship is a roller coaster ride for these 10 episodes. Magnus is no longer the High Warlock of Brooklyn thanks to his support of the Sealy Queen back in Season 2B. He's back to just wheeling and dealing potions, while Alec has been offered a position on the council, which would mean moving to Idris and leaving Magnus behind. Well, Alec ends up turning down the position because he picks his dream man over his dream job. Lorenzo becomes the new High Warlock, and let's just say he's not too fond of Magnus or really anybody. But back to Malik. As the timeline is revealed in this season, everything we've seen that's happened so far on this show has taken place over the course of around 2 months. Kinda crazy, right? Well, Alec thinks it's time that maybe he moves in with Magnus, but Magnus is pretty hesitant and wants to take things slow. Why? Because Magnus is basically scared in ways of getting into another serious relationship. He even keeps a box of mementos from past relationships because he's obviously outlived those people. Alec ends up finding that box as well and is now worried, and they begin to worry about their future and all of this, and ultimately they decide to live in the present and love each other, and all is right with Malik. As for the love life of Izzy, she ends up meeting a doctor named Charlie and attempts to date him, but ultimately it doesn't work out because Izzy decides that she hates having to lie about everything to him. I will say the end of the season does make it feel like they're definitely setting up for Izzy and Simon to maybe happen. Is anyone else getting those Sizzy vibes happening for 3B? For that to happen, it would mean Simon and Maya will have to break up, which doesn't quite happen in these first 10 episodes, but it seems like it could be on that path. So let's talk about these two. Simon begins the season at the Sealy Court where the Sealy Queen puts a mark on his head, but he has no idea what it is. He and Maya are going pretty strong and getting serious, but the rest of the pack do not approve of that relationship. And when they attempt to force Simon to move out of the boathouse, they see just what that mark on his forehead can do. It ends up hurting anyone who tries to hurt Simon. Ultimately, Luke goes to see Simon, and Simon knows it's time for him to move out. But in the meantime, he's been on a mission to figure out what the mark on his head is all about. But no one seems to know anything about it. Not Clary, not Raphael, and the Sealy Queen won't let him back into the realm, so Simon has to figure it out on his own. With Simon now needing a place to stay, he ends up finding the perfect apartment when he accidentally runs a bike courier off the road. That guy's name is Kyle. We ultimately learn that Kyle is a werewolf and a member of the Praetor Lupus, and his assignment is to protect Simon. At first, Simon is pissed to learn the secret, and Kyle is a little too overprotective, but they end up striking a deal to work things out and live in a way that, both can do what they need to do. However, this Kyle guy has another secret up his sleeve. His name is actually Jordan, and he's Maya's ex-boyfriend, yeah, the one who turned her. Maya is definitely not too happy to see him back, but Jordan says that he picked the assignment before he knew that Maya was Simon's girlfriend, and now he can't leave the assignment because it breaks the Praetor Lupus code, or oath. We get flashbacks to see just how serious Maya and Jordan's relationship were, and they were really in love. In fact, they had a dream of moving to Fiji together, but after Jordan was turned, his demeanor changed, and Maya decided she wanted to go to college, and that's when, Jordan ended up turning Maya. Jordan just kind of wants to prove to her that he is a changed man, and he's now going to be here to protect who he needs to, and he's not going to abandon people, because Maya's main beef with him is that he abandoned her after turning her, whereas she ended up, attacking a girl, and she stayed with her in order to make sure she was okay. And that's really all she wanted from Jordan. In fact, she still thinks that Jordan needs to learn that, so she says that he has to stick with his assignment of protecting Simon, but it means that they're still not going to be friends. Jordan continues to try to prove to Maya that he is a changed person, but all this drama with him and with Simon and the awkwardness, it's making her think a lot, and she ends up leaving town for a bit in order to take care of herself and to get some time to, clear her head and figure out what's going on. Through Jordan's help, though, we learn that Simon's mark is called the Mark of Cain, and it hurts anyone who tries to hurt him 7 times worse, and it may be the only thing that could help when it comes to getting rid of the greater demon Lilith, but more on her later. Now let's talk about Raphael. This guy has a tough time this season. He's still hung up on trying to figure out how Simon became a daylighter, so he rescued Heidi, the girl who was killed at the Bleeder's Den that Simon thought he had killed. Well, Simon didn't kill her, but Simon's blood was still in her system when she died, so she thinks Simon is her sire. Raphael experiments on her, trying to turn her into a daylighter, but all that does is make Heidi thirsty for vengeance on him. With his experiments failing, Raphael's life gets worse when his sister ends up dying, and he's in pretty bad shape. And to make matters worse, Heidi escapes. She then turns into Simon's stalker, but sidetracked when Raphael shows up to take her back home, but she turns the tables on him and drugs him, shackles him to the roof to basically burn up when the sun rises. He ends up being saved by Izzy and Clary thanks to the messy trail Heidi left behind. Raphael comes clean about experimenting on Heidi, and Izzy says she won't report his crimes if he leaves the city, and that's the last we've seen of Raphael, but not of Heidi. She continues to stalk Simon, but he gets the best of her and turns her over to the Praetor Lupus. She returns though thanks to Lilith and holds Simon's mom and sister Becky hostage. Since she stole all Simon's blood, he's extra hungry, and he ends up not being able to resist feeding off his sister since Heidi cut Becky's neck. Izzy shows up in time to stop Simon from killing Becky, but the damage has been done as Simon's mom hates him and calls him a monster and tells the police her son is a vampire. Thankfully, Becky is okay. She's not going to turn. She just needs a blood transfusion, and she is more understanding when Simon explains what happened to him. And she says she won't let him erase her mind again, but she feels bad that she wasn't there for him the first time he went through all these awful things, so now she plans to be there for him. But he has to do something about his mom. So instead of compelling her to forget what happened, he compels her into believing that he is dead. And honestly, it's one of the most heartbreaking storylines and scenes of this whole first 10 episodes. Besides the whole Raphael sister thing, this is the moment that actually made me start to well up with tears. It's so heartbreaking because, you know, Simon has a sister though, so that's going to be a good thing, I hope. Heidi, however, is still on the loose, so I'm guessing we can definitely expect to see her in Season 3B. But I do love how Izzy is there for Simon through all of this since Maya went to go have some alone time. And that's why I feel like this sets up for Simon and Izzy to possibly grow even closer, because she was there for him through this traumatic time with his family. But I guess we're going to have to stay tuned to figure out if that happens. Before getting to the main storyline of the first half of the season, what else is there to talk about? Well, we have some romance brewing between Maris, Alec, Izzy, and Jace's mom, and Luke. Maris is now divorced and has been excommunicated and de-ruined for her involvement with the Circle back in the day. Now she's planning on sticking around and making more time for her kids, and she's adjusting to kind of the mundane life. And it's a moment when Luke tells her that he hasn't seen her put her hair down in 20 years and she still looks as lovely as she did when they were kids. That hints at the possible romance there, and you know what? I'm all for it. She even helps Luke later when it comes to dealing with Lilith. Yeah, this romance, I am here for. I'm shipping it. Alright, now let's get to dealing with this evil Lilith, whose mission this season is to bring her beloved son Jonathan back to life. And nothing's gonna stop her from doing it. In order to do that, she takes on a human form and heads to New York and sets up shop where she begins sending out her little flying demon things to possess people. She needs around 33 disciples to basically kill a loved one and come spill their blood at her altar. We also later learn there are a few other ingredients she needs to make this resurrection happen. Meanwhile, Jace is still having trouble sleeping, and it's a result of Raziel's wish. In fact, when Jace does try to sleep, he keeps having visions of himself killing Clary. Clary wants him to get help and thinks she should come clean about what happened at Lake Lynn, but Jace won't let her. He says he's going to get some help from the Silent Brothers, but he never really makes it there. Why? Because he's actually leading a double life, but he doesn't really know that. Our gang is investigating all the possessions happening in the city thanks to Lilith and some owl-faced demon thing that's doing most of the destruction, and Jace is the one who seems to be staying up all night trying to find this owl. He begins having visions of Jonathan as well and thinks that Jonathan is somehow the owl, but they learn after getting in a fight with Owl that it couldn't be Jonathan because the owl face didn't respond to Izzy's whip, so it's not demonic. With Jace continuing to lose sleep and get more frazzled, he and Alec begin to worry that maybe Jace inherited his mom's mental illness, but it turns out that Jace is actually the owl, and Lilith has been possessing him in his sleep. There is one thing, though, that can snap Jace out of this possession, and that, of course, is Clary and her love, and their love together. So Lilith has to find a way to fix that problem, so she goes to Magnus, who gives her an elixir, but he doesn't know who she is, and that elixir will break that love, but to make it work, she needs a sliver of the soul of the person that needs to be forgotten, which means she needs Clary's soul. Now, to get some clarity on the whole Jace situation, Clary decides to take Luke and they go to see his sister Cleophas because they think she can get in contact with the angels and the angels can offer some answers. Clary ends up calling on Ithuriel, who says that returning from death made Jace vulnerable and a new evil has arrived in the realm. And he's about to say what evil that is and who the owl's master is, but before he can, the master actually shows up, Lilith in her demon form, and rips out Ithuriel's heart, killing him, and she takes a sliver of Clary's soul. Yeah, she killed the angel. That's a big thing. Lilith then goes to Jace and gives him the elixir, and now he is all hers. Clary won't be a problem anymore. No one's also looking for Jace since he said that he went to go see the Silent Brothers for help. Jace returns though and is definitely acting off towards everyone, especially Clary. He's on his mission though to bring Lilith the last disciple she needs, and that disciple at first seemed like it was going to be Izzy's doctor friend Charlie, but it turned out to be Ollie, Luke's partner. Clary, Magnus, and Luke try to stop the owl from possessing Ollie, but it's too late and they discover that the owl is Jace. Clary ends up fighting Jace on the rooftop, but that's when he throws her off, proving that he no longer loves her because of the possession taking full control. So he throws her off the roof, she lands on a car, Clary survives and ends up calling Simon for help. Clary has to come clean to the group about what really happened at Lake Lynn, and it's actually Alec who surprisingly comforts her, telling her that he would have done the same thing with the wish. And that's actually one of my favorite moments, to see Alec bond with Clary in that way and kind of help her out there. Now the group has to figure out how to get Jace free from the owl, and Izzy has a plan. There's something called the Malachi configuration, a cage that was made to hold a greater demon but was never put into rotation with the weapons or approved or whatever, and it's being held at the Alicante Armory collecting dust. They decide to visit Imogen to see if they can get help getting it. Imogen decides to help them, but they run into Council Penhollow, who almost ruins their plans. Thankfully, Alec stalls her while Clary and Izzy get the Malachi configuration. Meanwhile, Jace is also been sent by Lilith to Alicante to get the missing ingredients for the resurrection, the flesh of his father and Clary's heart. So Jace ends up killing Imogen, who's obviously his grandmother, and he's gonna have to pay for that after he's not possessed anymore. And he heads to the cemetery to try to dig up Valentine. Our trio gets word and manages to get Jace into the Malachi configuration before he can dig up Valentine. Security is already on their way though, so Clary sacrifices herself and stays behind and portals the other three to Magnus, where he's been hard at work trying to figure out a way to reverse the elixir, but he can't find one. Magnus does have a plan though to possibly use both Izzy and Alec in the Parabatai rune to send them into Jace's mind to try to break him free of Lilith's hold. After a bit of a rocky start, it works and they're about to free Jace, but unfortunately Lilith comes crashing the party and breaks the magic and takes Jace with her. You see, she ended up learning where Jace was being held thanks to the evil Seelie Queen. So how did Lilith end up at the Seelie Court? Well, when Luke and Simon went out to try to track down Ollie and Lilith, they found her building, and when a few disciples tried to attack Simon, they turned to salt thanks to his mark. Lilith now figures out that Simon has this mark of Cain, so she pays a visit to the Seelie Queen to try to get her to remove it. The Seelie Queen says she can't, and so Lilith is about to kill her, but then the Seelie Queen decides to trade information about Jace. Now Magnus has to figure out another way to try to break the possession, and he thinks he's found this kind of magic spell that can draw on the magic of 12 other warlocks to help him, but he needs Lorenzo's permission to do so. Alec goes to seek that, and Lorenzo says he'll think about it, but ultimately is a snake in the grass and says no, so that leaves Magnus with only one choice of where to get the magic he needs to free Jace. He has to pay a visit to his father, Asmodeus, who is a greater demon and the Prince of Hell. Magnus ends up going to eat him, and Asmodeus is pretty insulted that Magnus would show up and ask for a favor and not offer an apology for banishing him to eat him. Asmodeus offers to help Magnus if he rules by his side, but Magnus says he won't do that and asks if there's another way, and there does happen to be one. But before getting to that, we have to talk about Clary. She's now a prisoner and was put on trial with the Soul Sword and basically ended up having to tell everything that was going on, including Jace, Lilith, and of course Raziel's wish. She's now been sentenced to death, and honestly these scenes in the show made me feel like I was watching an episode of Handmaid's Tale. Anyway, as Clary awaits death and she watches other inmates, including former Circle members, get burned at the stake, Iris seeks her way to the front of the cell to tell Clary she doesn't deserve this for stopping Valentine's wish. You remember Iris, right? She used to be the one that was in charge of Madsy. Iris then reveals that the council moved up her execution date because she refused to do what Council Penhollow wanted, raise Valentine from the dead to ask him about Lilith. This gives Clary an idea of how she can kind of prolong her death sentence a little, and she tells Council Penhollow that she'll do what Iris wouldn't. Clary uses the necromancy rune to bring Valentine back to life. He says he has no idea what Lilith wants with him, but says that he did summon Lilith once back in the day to get some of her blood, which he put into Jonathan, which gave Lilith the son she always wanted. Clary ends up figuring out that Lilith is going to resurrect Jonathan. Then everything with Valentine goes south as he doesn't want to die again, so he takes Council Penhollow's hostage. He ends up getting some arrows in the neck and head and all this, but surprise, he's not dying. He then goes to the inmates and talks about bringing the circle back and all this, and he goes to find a way out, but the door is locked and his stele and the rune aren't working. One person can open the door though, that is Clary. She opens the door because she wants to go with him to get back to her friends. She's actually kind of tricked Valentine. She ends up using the stele to remove or turn off the necromancy rune, and Valentine dies again. Then a security guard shows up and she gets on her knees and he handcuffs her, and surprise, It's Jace. He ends up taking a rib from Valentine and then takes Clary back to New York to take her to Lilith. Clary's a smart one though, and she makes herself trip and grabs a piece of glass to cut her hand to leave a trail of blood so others can find her because Jace ended up turning off her anti-tracking rune. For Luke, he's determined to head to Idris to try to free Clary, and because of this he loses his pack and then even gets taken back to the police station before he can portal because Ollie's still missing and the lieutenant has a lot of questions and is worried about his behavior. In fact, they even want to question Luke for possibly being a suspect in the murder of Ollie's mother and some other things. Maris shows up just in time to get Luke, and Luke ends up handing in his badge and gun for suspension to go help find Clary. They then meet with Simon, Alec, and Izzy at the building where Lilith is holding Clary. Jace goes to battle Alec while Izzy and Luke hold off the disciples in the lobby of the building. Jace pretty much brings Alec within inches of death when Magnus makes his dramatic entrance, blasting Jace and freeing him from the owl. So at what cost was this magic to Magnus? Well, he had to give up his magic in order to get that tiny bit of magic that saved Jace. Now he's off to take care of Alec and mend him back to health, but there's no magic, so they're gonna have to do it the old-fashioned way, or hopefully there's a rune for that. Meanwhile, Lilith is at the top of the building and draws a rune on Clary that basically binds her heart to Jonathan's heart, because as long as her heart beats, his will too. As Lilith goes to check on Jonathan, Simon speeds his way in to free Clary and give her a stele. They have to find a way to make Lilith go after Simon to try to activate that Mark of Cain, but they know that Lilith is too smart for that, so Clary has to come up with some kind of plan. She starts to cut her neck like she's going to kill herself, which makes Lilith upset. Then Clary uses the stele to draw the rune on her hand, blasts the sunshine or whatever at Lilith. It blows her back, and Simon has the time to get to Jonathan's tomb, and he starts to try to bust it open. That's when Lilith gets mad because she will do anything for her son, and she goes after Simon. Simon's mark activates and blasts Lilith away and sends him off the roof. We then see Jonathan's gross dead hand grab Clary's arm, so it seems like it's a little too late and that Jonathan's been resurrected. Then Lilith gets up and feels the effects of the mark and dissolves and gets sent back to Edom. But as that happens, it causes a massive blast that blows off the top of the building. Jace, who is now free from under her possession, runs up to find Clary, but he's a little too late. Simon ends up climbing back onto the top of the building, and he sees the damage that's been done to the building, and he says that Clary is dead. Also, all the disciples are now free from their possession as well, so Ollie's okay. And with that, that wraps up Season 3A. Now, I've read a few comments, and I guess this deviates a lot from the books. I've said in the past I actually haven't read those, and I know that some people aren't happy with what the show's done, but honestly, on the devil's advocate side of that, would you want to watch a show where you know everything that's going to happen? I don't know. That's up to you guys to figure out. As far as Clary's so-called death, well, she's not actually dead because you can't kill her off, right? She's one of the main characters. Plus, she's already filmed Season 3B, and there were just recently paparazzi shots of her, with her runes filming in, I think, Paris or something. So, Clary's alive, and Catherine McNamara has even said it as well. But we do know that that's what everyone is going to think for now when Season 3B comes back. Will that grief bring Simon and Jace closer? Because I'd actually like to see that. They had a team-up moment in this season where they tried to figure out what secret Jordan was hiding, and I actually really love that. Catherine McNamara, who plays Clary, did tell Elle that Clary's not in Edom, but she is somewhere that you wouldn't expect. Well, I have no idea what that means, but if you do, please hit me up in the comments and let me know what that is. Now, when it comes to Season 3B, we'll kick it off probably with everyone grieving over Clary being dead while she is off dealing with Jonathan wherever that is. Basically, everything in this whole entire city as well over in Idris is a mess. So it's going to be exciting to see where the second half of this season goes. I know there are obviously other things that happened, but I didn't think they were huge things. Who knows though? Maybe we'll see if they are, like that one dude flirting with Alec. But I didn't touch on those because I just wanted to get through the major things, and hopefully I got through them all. Now it is your turn to weigh in on what you thought about this first half of Season 3. Are you happy with the changes the show made or no? What storyline or moment was your favorite, and what are your predictions for next season? Let me know, then you can click right over here to check out my season finale recap of Riverdale Season 2 and my latest 13 Reasons Why videos. Subscribe if you like what you see, hit that thumbs up, and we'll come back next half of the season to talk about 3B when that is over, and we'll discuss it all. That's it for now. See you guys later. Bye.